All right, man. The Niners offensive line stuff is always really interesting because I don't know that there's a bigger divide between how the coaching staff views a player and how the fan base and podcasters, bloggers, writers, whoever, media view. I forgot the overarching term, how fans and media view the 49ers offensive line situation. Because,
Yeah,
go ahead.
no, I would agree with that. I tend to think like on one hand, they're definitely playing with fire without having a true bona fide backup you feel awesome about should Trent Williams get hurt again. On the other hand, I don't know how many awesome backup tackles there are throughout the league and what teams really wouldn't just be screwed if their star left tackle, if they had a star left tackle, got injured, right? So I don't know how much I blame the 49ers for that or how worried about that I should be. I also think the rest of the guys might not be as bad as we tend to think they are. And I also think there's generally just a lack of good offensive line play throughout the league. I think there are about 3 or 4 just really good offensive lines, probably 20 like really mediocre offensive lines based on the week, and then a handful of really bad offensive lines, right? That's kind of where I think things are at. So I understand sort of the angst. I definitely think the 49ers could have, thrown more darts at the board when it comes to the draft in recent years. So you have a little bit better depth and you're not looking at a scenario where, you have some options, particularly along the interior that you don't necessarily love. But we'll get into that as we go here. But yeah, I hear you. There's definitely a chasm between like Chris Forrester, widely regarded as like a really good offensive line coach. Kyle Shanahan loves him. Kyle Shanahan tends to have a good feel for what works when it comes to assistant coaches in the league. So I give Kyle Shanahan some equity from that standpoint, and I give him equity from the standpoint of being able to scheme around offensive line issues that you might have. But in an ideal world, you would just love to have a ton of faith in your offensive line and be like, yeah, offensive line's a strength of our team. We feel like we can, even if in bad weather, in a playoff setting against a really good defensive line, we feel great about our offensive line that we could control the line of scrimmage with anybody. And I think that's probably the biggest, I guess, area of concern is like you go in and play the Eagles or a team with a dominant defensive line, maybe on the road in a cold weather situation. Do you love the 49ers offensive line in that matchup? Probably not. So you're relying a lot on Brock Purdy to be able to make plays potentially outside of structure and Kyle Shanahan to scheme it up. And I would say that's not the ideal scenario if you're trying to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, man. The fact that you can point to a pass blocking issue in every single one of their major postseason losses under Kyle Shanahan is, I think, pretty telling. But also, they've been to a lot of big playoff games under Kyle Shanahan. So while I would personally probably attack the offensive line a little bit differently, it's kind of hard to argue with the process, right? They've put together really good teams. I think where they've fallen short a little bit, and I want to get to this year's offensive line. I don't think we need to have a sweeping discussion about their offensive line philosophy, but I do feel like they reached a point because their whole philosophy is you get the guys that score the touchdowns and then you piece together an offensive line. You just need starters. You don't need stars. You just need starters. And I think they reached a point where they had enough playmakers. Like they had a glut of playmakers and they had a window in there, whether it was a year or 2 years, I would have to go back and look exactly, but they had a window in there in 2022, 2023, where you could have loaded up on offensive linemen and you could have really put in work to try and bolster that group. And they just never did. It was Trey Sermon, and then it was Ty Davis Price, and then it was Danny Gray. They're just whiffing on all these offensive playmakers.
Jake Moody.
And boy, Jake Moody, the guys who kick the field goals. They have all these picks that you can point to and go, man, an offensive lineman there might have helped. And I know hindsight's 2020, but it just, I think this is something that might just be, I don't think it's going to get fixed. I don't think it's ever going to change.
Yeah.
The philosophy is the philosophy.
It feels like what they did with the defensive line in this year's draft, focusing so heavily on it with, you know, the picks early on. That feels like what they're going to do with the offensive line next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what they do, man. They like kind of just decide to ignore positions, and then if they can hit it hard in one off season, then that's what they'll do. It's what they did in with pass rusher in 2018, right? Like that was the famous. It's hard to beat out Cassius Marsh off season after the 2018 draft when they had a clear need for pass rushers. And then what did they do in the 2019 off season? They luck into the number 2 pick by way of being bad via Jimmy Garoppolo's injury, get Nick Bosa, and then which happened after they traded and signed D Ford. So, you know, that's just sort of how they operate. Instead of kind of sprinkling investments into the offensive line or into certain positions throughout the time, they kind of hit them hard all at once. And in the aggregate, I think it's been fine. Like the Niners have been, you know, their track record speaks for itself. But to your point, and what the point I think fans will always come back to is the key plays in the biggest moments of the season and Super Bowls and NFC championship games where it's Aaron Donald or it's Chris Jones making plays and beating your offensive line at right guard or left guard on the interior, and you don't win a championship because of it.
Yep.
And that's just what it's going to be.
Killer.
It's just what it's going to be until they overcome that. So,
yep. It's killer. Let's take a look now, just kind of go position by position and go through this that way. I think that's the easiest way to kind of get our arms around a pretty sizable position group. So we'll start at left tackle where Trent Williams is coming back. He's age 37 and a player that, to me, the 49ers need to start considering how they're going to replace him. And I think it was widely considered they would do so in this year's draft. Looks like they're kicking the can to at least 2026 and perhaps beyond. The question I have with Trent Williams is not if he's still good. Like, even if he declines, he's still going to be a really good player, right? Like I don't think you're going to see such a steep drop off where all of a sudden he's an unplayable left tackle. But this is also a player who is now 37 years old, coming off a major ankle injury, who hasn't played a full season since arriving in 2020. And we'll get to the swing tackle stuff and the lack of kind of insulation from a Trent Williams injury. But I'm not going to necessarily freak out that the 49ers don't have like a viable backup for Trent Williams, because finding a viable backup at left tackle, kind of like you mentioned earlier, it's just there's not that many great offensive tackles in the league, and having 2 on 1 team, specifically one as a backup, is probably tough. But I just I don't want to call this a position of concern for me, because Trent Williams is a Hall of Famer and he's still so freaking good. But man, it feels like a lot of the 49ers' ability to bounce back this season rides on whether they can get 16 or 17 games out of Trent Williams.
And I would say, to your point, just about the concern about longevity and his ability to stay healthy, if Trent Williams does get hurt, knock on wood, like you ideally hope it happens before the trade deadline, because maybe at this point, that's probably your only avenue towards having a starter level player at the back end of, or we're playing left tackle should Trent Williams get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like I always go into a season like, well, the 49ers are a little thin here, a little thin there. It was like, well, they could use another pass rusher a couple years ago. They went and get Chase Young, right? 2019. Yeah, they could use another receiver. Then they go get Emmanuel Sanders. You don't see it as often, I feel like, with tackles, but you would hope that they would be able to find a suitable starter option should Trent Williams get hurt early. And again, knock on wood. But yeah, man, it's a little bit precarious. But I do think that, like, Trent Williams losing weight and coming in slimmer this year, I think bodes well. And I think him having a long off season could potentially bode well for him. He was not a guy, obviously, with Washington who was used to having short off seasons. He's been banged up the last couple of years. And I think there's just a lot to like team wide overall. The idea of like having all of January, all of February to not worry about playing football or worry about getting ready to play football, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Trent Williams is probably the 49ers player who needed the long off season, maybe like him and Christian McCaffrey,
Yeah.
right? Like needed it the most.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I think there's a little bit of optimism there. And I mean, he is Trent Williams. Like he's a Hall of Famer. He still plays at a high level when he is healthy.
Right.
It's just keeping him healthy.
Yeah.
And you know, being at the offseason program, having his contract stuff handled. I wouldn't expect him to get a ton of reps during, you know, obviously training camp and all of that, but
Right.
I think he's much better positioned to have a good season than he has been in previous years, particularly last year. So
Yeah.
for his sake, hopefully that makes a difference.
So maybe part of the reason the 49ers don't have an heir apparent to Trent Williams on the roster yet is at least partially because of Colton McKivitz, who's slotted in at right tackle. I'd be pretty shocked if anybody other than McKivitz is starting on the right side opposite Trent Williams to open the year. But I think part of the reason that the 49ers didn't feel the need to go get an offensive tackle in round one this year is because Colton McKivitz improved last season. He's not great. I don't want to come across like this is the best right tackle in football, but he's a starting level right tackle who I think they could improve there for sure. But I think his improvement last year, his individual improvement last year, sort of pushed the 49ers into being able to kick the Trent Williams can down the road another season.
How so? Like elaborate on what McKivitz has to do with Trent.
Because if Colton McKivitz still stunk, I think the 49ers with the 11th pick this year are going, okay, need to replace a right tackle, and that player can then flip over to the left side post Trent Williams. But I think I think that McKivitz was good enough that the 49ers don't believe it's a need. I don't think they need to necessarily replace him. So salute to Colton McKivitz, man. I went into last year thinking he wouldn't survive the year at right tackle, and he not only did that, he got better as the season wore on and had his best season as a pro. So I think you could do worse with the McKivitz that's starting right tackle.
So what's interesting with McKivitz to me, because I'm with you, like I don't think before last year, I was like, all right, he's probably a bottom third starting right tackle in the league. I think now he had the type of season that makes you think he's anywhere from the 12th to 18th best right tackle in the league, something like that.
Sure. Is that where he's at in your rankings?
On my right tackle big board. That's about where he's falling. I haven't finalized it yet, obviously.
No, of course you can't. You got to wait until after camp.
Right. Gotta wait till some preseason games get played and I can grind the tape. But he's making, I counted it out, he's making just over $5 million this year. He's the 28th highest paid right tackle in the league.
Yeah.
So if you want to like spin the positive narrative around Colton McKivitz, you say, well, he's about average, but he's getting paid like a bottom level right tackle.
He's getting paid like he stinks.
He's getting paid like he's not very good. And what's interesting too, Jalen Moore signed a 2-year, $30 million deal with the Chiefs, $15 million a year. If Colton McKivitz has another year like he had last year or improves upon it, Colton McKivitz is going to get 20 million plus a year from somebody.
Yeah.
On the free agent market. That's just that's just what it's going to be if he plays well. And so like I've come around on McKivitz, particularly diving into sort of like what he did last year and the improvements that he made, and the fact that like I just he still could be a better run blocker for sure. He improved dramatically as a pass blocker. So I'm not so worried about Colton McKivitz, the player. I might be worried about the future of the right tackle position, given that he's probably going to get $20 million a year from somebody next year. And yeah, there's a very real scenario where Trent Williams retires, Colton McKivitz is a free agent, and you're like, man, we have some serious decisions we have to make on both tackle spots if you're the Niners.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the interesting backdrop to all this, in my view. Like, what's it going to look like? Like, Trent Williams retires, Colton McKivitz is going into free agency. Are you trying to get a new contract with McKivitz done before the season ends? Is it one of those like Diamador Lenore, Dre Greenlaw scenarios where they sign sort of a below market value contract during the season just to get it done? Or if you're Colton McKivitz, you're like looking around like, man, if Jalen Moore just got $15 million and he wasn't even a starter last year, like I could break the bank. I'm going to hold off on signing.
Yeah.
And test the free agent waters. Then to your point, the Niners are like, man, they might have to make a splash at offensive tackle in free agency and use a first round pick in the position, which they haven't done obviously since Mike McGlinchey. So yeah, it's interesting. Fascinating, one might say.
That's some are saying that. I'm trying to do some quick math. 13, 14, 16, 17, 19. So 19 of Colton McKivitz's 36 pressures last year were allowed between weeks 1 and 7. And all 6 of his QB hits were allowed in those first 7 weeks. After week 7, he allowed 1 sack, no quarterback hits, and only 17 pressures. Yeah. That's pretty impressive, man. So salute to Colton McKivitz. Better player than I thought he was going to be. The question for me now is at the swing tackle spot, and this is where the Trent Williams conversation kind of turns to, because if you're going to put it in pencil that Trent Williams is going to miss 3 or 4 games, I think the current favorites to battle it out for the swing tackle spot are Andre Dillard and Austin Pleasance.
Spencer Burford?
Spencer Burford, maybe. I think he'll be in the left guard battle. We'll get to that in a second. But it's just, I don't know, man. Those are 2 not awesome NFL players.
Would agree. But again, like, it's just not a unique problem to the Niners.
No, for sure.
There are not very many good backup offensive linemen in the league. So I'm with you. It's definitely problematic, but you just got to hope that your star players stay healthy. I mean, that's the thing. That's the whole thing for the Niners. Like, until some of these young players establish themselves more and get, proved to be reliable, like keystone type players, the Niners are just super reliant on the top end of their roster. Their stars have to, for them to do anything this year, their stars have to stay healthy.
Sure.
And that applies to Trent Williams as much as anybody else.
I will say Austin Pleasance is only 27, doesn't have a ton of football under his belt. So maybe there's something untapped with him. But, and Andre Dillard's been in the league for, how long's Andre Dillard been in the league? 7 years, 29. But I think the ideal for me, and this goes back to the draft, is there would be some kind of draft pick here to at least battle for the swing tackle spot. Some kind of young player to develop in that role.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And not having that is a little disappointing. But you said it. Your starters need to stay healthy along the offensive line. That is a massive, massive key. Let's jump over to the interior. Let's jump to left guard, where I think there's going to be a legitimate battle between Ben Barch and Spencer Burford. Get excited, everybody. But
Connor Colby?
Okay, well, hang on. Don't step on my bit. I'm a big Connor Colby head, dude. So I don't think he's going to battle for a starting job. I do think 7th round pick Connor Colby is going to make the team, though. But he loves to finish, I heard. So Ben Barch was the backup left guard last year. He was the number 2 left guard. And actually, I acquitted himself pretty well when he had to start for Aaron Banks and then got hurt I think in his second start, he got hurt early on against the Bears and didn't get a chance to really kind of solidify his spot at left guard. But I think he'll be the favorite there going into the year. But Spencer Burford, once he moved to the left side, was a better player than he was on the right side. So if the 49ers are smart, and they maybe this just doesn't work how I think it does. But every time I believe, oh, there's going to be a legitimate battle at that position, there's not. They put somebody in with the ones on day one, and that person just runs with the ones the entire time, and they get the starting job. So I think there should be a battle between Ben Barch and Spencer Burford, and maybe Connor Colby, where they're legit rotating in, getting snaps at the ones, get your alternating series with starters in the playoffs, and really trying to see which of those two players is better, because it's a huge question mark for both. I don't know that the 49ers are solid at left guard and replacing Aaron Banks, but neither Burford nor Barch cost a lot of money. And I think between the two of them, if they duke it out, the 49ers can find a quality starting left guard. Because replacing Aaron Banks is not I think, going to be an arduous task.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. These are both former 4th round picks. I do think with Burford, there is significant room for improvement. Like, this is what, his 4th season. He's going into a contract year. Like, there's room for, he's super athletic. There's room for him to, like, he has a type of upside and ceiling that would suggest he could be a plus level starter. He just, for whatever reason, has not gotten there yet in his time with the Niners. So yeah, like, ideally you would have an option that you feel better about and there aren't question marks, but maybe you're getting a situation where one of Barch or Burford improves, and then it to your point, it just kind of plays itself out in training camp and that becomes apparent.
Yeah.
But if neither of these guys really improve and they both kind of just continue to be journeyman level offensive linemen, then it's like, all right, this is a clear issue and potentially another position that you need to prioritize in the offseason.
Yeah, man. I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they're not gonna prioritize. I know they drafted Aaron Banks in the 2nd round. I shouldn't say that, but I think they're really, really desperately hoping that one of these two players is good and can sign a cheap extension and be the left guard for the next 3 or 4 years.
There was a little bit of talk about Gray Zabel in the 1st round of the draft. Do you remember that? Like, if the Niners didn't like the defensive lineman available at 11, that Gray Zabel was on their radar. Remember Daniel Jeremiah?
Yeah. He did say that.
Maybe that's,
he said he liked the fit. He didn't say he was on their radar. Huge difference.
I don't think Daniel Jeremiah would have thrown Gray Zabel's name into that discussion. If he didn't hear
the 49ers, he put him at 11 in his mock draft.
Right. I don't think he would do that without hearing something.
I'm skeptical.
You think he just did it because he's like, this guy who like no one really knows and is talking about in the 20s. I like the fit. You think that's what he did?
Yes. I think he heat checked.
Okay.
He's like, this is a thing nobody's talking about. I'm going to call it.
I think he did it because he heard something.
I wouldn't be shocked if the 49ers traded down into the 20s and they said, yeah, if we get down there, Gray Zabel's a player we like. And he went, oh, snap. Gray Zabel. Anyways.
Perked my interest. Piqued my interest. Perked my
piqued your interest. Piqued. So Nick Zakel moved the needle for you at all?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to be honest, not a whole lot.
Sure.
Not a whole lot of needle moving.
I wouldn't, dude. I think Connor Colby might be able to play.
Yeah. He played a lot in college. He played
7th round pick from
positions. He can move. He's got really short arms. It's probably the reason why it lasted the 7th round. He's like in the 5th or 6th percentile in arm length.
Yeah, get that spider
I mean,
graph out.
at seventh percentile, excuse
Oof.
me, 7th percentile in arm length, 6th percentile in wingspan. I'm gonna need to do some digging, maybe talk to some scouts on the difference between arm length and wingspan, or at least what goes into that. I honestly don't know. Do people? Is
I've
it
never
just
done.
like if you have broad shoulders? Could you have broad shoulders and short arms, and that's why I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I legit think that's what it is.
But broad jump, 84th percentile for Connor.
Athlete,
40-yard dash, 79th percentile. Like, can move a
athlete,
little bit. Can move. So,
and
and
he's
this is
just
all offensive linemen. This is not guards. This is all offense. Oh, this includes tackles.
this might be profiling, but we're here. This dude grew up a fan of the Iowa Hawkeyes and grew up right down the street from the University of Iowa. I almost said from the football stadium, from the University of Iowa. And then he goes to the University of Iowa and starts like 50 games during his career at 3 different positions. This dude is literally just a corn-fed hoss. And I think he's going to be a baller.
Okay.
I'm planting my flag on Connor Colby Island.
All right. I'm not there with you yet. Again, just going to wait to see some preseason games, see how he holds up.
No, it's fine.
See if,
Wait for information to react like a journalist.
see if his arm length is an issue in his pass sets or not. See if he can reach in the zone running game. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like they could badly use a guy like Connor Colby, like hitting just like a random late round pick, undrafted guy. Like, oh, they actually found a diamond in the rough offensive lineman, and now this dude's good. That happens a lot. It just has not happened to the 49ers, maybe with the exception of Dominic Pooney, whose name we haven't even said in this podcast yet.
Well, we're getting there. We're getting to right guard, but it's happened with Brock Purdy. It happened with Jawan Jennings, DJ Jones, 6th round pick. Elijah Mitchell, 6th round pick. Like they've running into an offensive lineman who's just awesome on day 3 would be a pretty significant victory for a team that just punts on finding good offensive linemen.
What round was Jason Kelce drafted in?
One of them. I'm going to say second
true.
round.
6th round. Jason Kelce was a 6th round pick, 191st overall in 2011. So yeah, like it can happen.
Is that Kylie Kelsey's husband?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Salute. So you mentioned Dominic Pooney, 3rd round pick last year, arguably the best rookie offensive lineman. Slot him in at starting right guard, and this is, I think, what the 49ers are hoping for. Finding a player that they feel good about running out at guard for at least the next 4 years. And if he's awesome in those 4 years, then great.
There's a chance, like, if Dominic Pooney continues to ascend and builds on that season, and it's like, oh, Dominic Pooney's like a Pro Bowler type guy, and Colton McKivitz plays like he did in the second half of the season, and Trent Williams stays healthy, then maybe the Niners offensive line isn't that bad.
I'm with you, man. There's a chance they run into the problem they always run into, and maybe it's left guard this year. Maybe neither Barch nor Burford nor my beloved Connor Colby wind up being starting caliber players, and they just really struggle to fill that hole, right? But I think you hit the nail on the head. What?
I've been watching your show on YouTube or even D'Lo and KC too. There's just been a lot of flag moments.
Oh yeah, no. I worded it that way because I was not. If I was on the radio, I would have very much said, or my beloved Connor Colby, maybe they just can't find a player to play that position.
Right. Instead of filling that hole.
Yeah. Likes to finish, you know?
You should explain that bit since you've said it twice. At least explain that.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. So Connor Colby's write-up in The Beast by Dane Brugler, which if you don't subscribe to The Athletic, we don't work for The Athletic or anything, but that makes the subscription worth it if you're into the NFL draft. Dane Brugler's draft guide is just insane. It's like 600 pages, but he covers so many prospects. And in Connor Colby's write-up, one of the things he wrote in the overview was that he loves to finish. And I just really, I love football guy terms, man. They're just so earnestly like, oh, this guy's got thunder in his mitts and he loves to finish. Like, oh my God. All right. Sure.
I've heard and read so many different football vernacular things. I don't even know if I've ever heard anyone say he loves to finish.
Oh, thank God it's July 1 and nobody's listening to this podcast. Where were we? Connor Colby, left guard. Oh, if they can't find a starting left guard, they are going to run into the same problem where even if they make a playoff run, it's like, man, that was just really a thorn in their side. But to your point, if they're just starting caliber players and barring an extreme fall off from Jake Brendel, who we'll talk about in a second, if Pooney's a Pro Bowler and McKivitz is improves upon last year the way he did the year before, yeah, you're looking at a really, really freaking good group, I think. But there's just so many question marks going into the year for me, including with honestly, Trent Williams, I don't have many questions about. I think Dominic Pooney is going to be a really good player. Don't have any questions about him. But obviously, left guard, we talked about Colton McKivitz. And then Jake Brendel, man, this is one of those things where I'm having a rough time because I watch Jake Brendel and I go, meh. And then you look at the numbers and it's like, all right. And then you hear John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan talk about Jake Brendel and how he's one of the best centers in the sport. And I thought maybe they were just gassing up their guy during the offseason, but they've done nothing to address the center position. They both apparently love Jake Brendel. And it's just one of those things where I just defer to them because they know way more about football than I do. And I'm just going to assume that Jake Brendel is a better player than what I observe.
Yeah, to me, he seems like the pretty clear and obvious weak link along the offensive line. And I just think that needed to be an area of emphasis in the offseason. Like, even if you draft a center in the 5th round, if you draft a center in the 5th round, that guy could not only compete potentially with Jake Brendel for a starting job, assuming you didn't draft like a scrub, or you might think about playing him at guard, throwing him the left guard mix, right? So there's kind of that there in that way. I think there's a little bit more value in drafting a center when you have a need there in the middle rounds of the draft or late rounds of the draft. And maybe Jake Brendel's dealing with an injury that we didn't know about, and that led to the reason he didn't look like he played very well. He had a gigantic brace on one of his elbows throughout the entire season.
Yeah.
Like maybe it was just one of those things where he was playing through a lot of pain, never showed up on the injury report, being a tough football guy, like fine. But Jake Brendel to me just isn't very good. And it's the most apparent when he goes up against elite defensive linemen. And it feels like there's a direct correlation. Like it feels like every good team in the NFL has a really good interior of the defensive line. It feels like
offensive
line,
defensive.
No,
line.
like defensive line. Like
yeah.
Like in the playoffs, the Niners are going to go against elite 3 techniques every week.
Yep.
Right. And that to me is where Jake Brendel not being very good stands out the most. It's like really good defensive tackles will just dog walk Jake Brendel right into Brock Purdy's lap. Or the Niners won't be able to get as much push in the running game along the interior as they need to because Jake Brendel just isn't all that good. But yeah, he's done something that, like the coaches love him. And my guess would be he played through injury and maybe it was a really painful injury and maybe even had like surgery in the offseason that we don't know about. But like things like that, sometimes coaches, like if guys play through injury and like don't complain, coaches love that shit.
Yep.
So sometimes it's like, oh, well, he still played at like, a below starter level, but like his arm was falling off. So like
Right.
we
Right.
love that guy. That guy is gold to us.
Right.
Maybe it was a situation like that. I'm just speculating. I don't know, but that would make more sense to me than them looking at Jake Brendel objectively if he were healthy and being like, "Oh, that guy's awesome." Because you watch him play, Jake Brendel is not awesome. I don't think Jake Brendel is an awesome player.
Yeah, he's fine. Just like, yeah.
What?
All
Yeah,
right.
maybe
The Colton McKivitz of centers.
the pre 2024 Colton McKivitz of centers. Like Colton McKivitz was actually pretty good in
Yeah, he's
2024,
good.
but like in 2023, we're like, Colton
I think
McKivitz not great.
a couple interesting names to watch out for here. Drake Nugent, undrafted center from Michigan last year, could make a little push. And then Matt Hennessy is a name that has not come up yet, shockingly. Matt Hennessy, just to get him a mention here on the pod, signed late last year with the 49ers. He's a center, a former third-round pick of the Falcons. Played for 5, 21, 22. He played 4 years, but missed the 2023 season with the Falcons. Signed last year late, but signed a 2-year deal. So I think the 49ers might like him a little bit. So that might be something to keep an eye on if Brendel struggles in camp or whatever. But there's not a surefire, okay, that's the young player that they want to be their long-term center. It's kind of Brendel and then nothing right now.
Is Matt Hennessy the Jake Brendel of backup centers?
Jake Brendel might be the Jake Brendel of backup centers, to be honest.
Wow. Oh, so is Hennessy beating him out? Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. Is Matt Hennessy the Cassius Marsh of Jake Brendel's?
Wow, really makes you think. Yeah, I don't have a lot there.
I was trying to. That's fine.
I would have hoped they would invest in center at some point, but
I'm trying to go through and see if there's any major names we missed on the offensive line, and I don't think there are. It's something I'm gonna watch during camp in the preseason. What that swing tackle spot looks like. Are either Andre Dillard or Austin Pleasance playing really well, where you feel good about them? If Trent Williams goes down, you feel like the 49ers can win a game without Trent Williams. And then obviously the left guard stuff, just kind of keeping an eye on who's rotating in with the first team, with the ones, whether it's Ben Barch or Spencer Burford or some combination of the two. I'm also kind of interested to see, not fascinated, just a little interested to see if Spencer Burford gets any snaps at tackle.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, we just did 40 minutes on the offensive line.
40 good minutes.
40 like pretty decent minutes. Like I'll be honest, I didn't know that we had 40 minutes on the offensive line in us, but
I didn't either. I'm really proud of us, especially since we've been so off and on with our podcasting throughout the month of June. It's knocking a little bit of rust off. We have a schedule laid out for these previews, for these positional previews. We started with the offensive line. Where did we land for our next one?
I believe it's going to be on the defensive side. I want to say secondary.
Yes, secondary. We will have a podcast coming out on the secondary. We're going to do a position preview 2 every week, right up until the 49ers Veterans Report on July 22nd. The final position preview will come out then. And then we'll get actual training camp practices and stuff to talk about. Cannot wait. So make sure to lock in. Tell your friends. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles podcast, or just search Candlestick Chronicles on YouTube. We pop right up. Subscribe, little notification bell, so it'll tell you when we go live. Really appreciate everybody's support over there. Please like the videos when you watch those. And then, of course, if you're listening to the podcast, subscribe wherever you get your pods and tell your friends. If you got a Niners group chat or you're part of a Niners group on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, send the podcast link there and tell our friends to subscribe to Candlestick Chronicles. Sponsored by Cooperage. Shout out to Lamb Chops. Shout out to Prize Picks. That's it for us. Till next time.